Until not that long ago, many of us wouldn't have imagined that we'd be seeing Metal Gear making any sort of meaningful comeback anytime soon. But with Konami having announced Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, long-suffering series fans are finally seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. After its announcement earlier this year, much more recently, we also got a first look at some in-engine gameplay as part of the Xbox Partner Preview Showcase. And even though it was a pretty brief look at the game, it was still packed full of quite a few finer hidden details. Here, we're going to look at a few that you may have missed. Visual flourishes. Visual upgrades are obviously going to be one of the most significant changes that we'll witness in Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, as compared to the original. And though the seemingly complete removal of the sepia tone has left some disappointed, MGS Delta's recent in-engine trailer did show some impressive examples of its graphical and technical upgrades. At about 16 seconds into the trailer, for instance, you can see the ground deforming in the background as ripples of water wash over it. Meanwhile, starting at the 55-second mark, there are also a couple of shots of a frog and crab where the true highlight is just how good the water itself looks. The very final shot of the trailer also showcases the impressive density of vegetation that the environments will seemingly boast. While throughout the trailer, it's hard not to be impressed by things like the textures of all of the terrain. Crouch walk.
The enemy! He's here!
You'd assume that crouch walking would be a pretty fundamental feature to have in any stealth game, but that's not necessarily always the case. For instance, other than the game's 3DS version, crouch walking wasn't possible in Metal Gear Solid 3. You could either walk upright, or you could crawl while you were prone. In MGS Delta, however, it looks like crouch walking has been added in. Very briefly, at around 30-second mark in the recent trailer, we can see Naked Snake going prone, but before he does that, for a split second, you can see him moving forward while in the crouch position, as if the player is cycling from upright to crouch to prone. Concrete evidence that crouch walking has been added into the game? Perhaps not, but we'd be surprised to see it missing in a modern remake of the game, because let's face it, that's a pretty basic feature. MGS5 animations. It looks like Konami has totally moved on from the Fox engine, with Metal Gear Solid Delta being developed on Unreal Engine 5 instead. Though it does seem like the company is still using some of the work it did with Metal Gear Solid 5. In particular, we can see that in some of the animations in the remake's recent trailer, the prone animation we just discussed looks like it's been taken from the Phantom Pain. While at about the 25-second mark, Naked Snake taking cover behind the stump also looks reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid 5's cover animations.
Alright, we'll bring him out.
Of course, Konami has clearly labeled the recent trailer as pre-alpha footage, which means there are things that they have shown that probably aren't just final yet, so there is a possibility that some of these animations end up getting tweaked. Zooming. Another small mechanic in Metal Gear Solid Delta that seems to be taken directly from Metal Gear Solid 5 in how it's visually presented is zooming the camera. A minute into the trailer, we see Naked Snake slowly moving forward while crouched behind a wall, before he stops at a corner and the camera zooms in on him and the patrolling enemy ahead of him. This is, of course, also not something that the original Metal Gear Solid 3 allowed players to do, and though it's obviously a pretty minor addition, we're curious to see how it impacts the remake stealth gameplay. Item boxes. As Metal Gear Solid 3 fans will recall, the original stealth masterpiece frequently saw players collecting items by picking up boxes scattered throughout the environments, and it seems those are making a comeback in almost exactly their original form. Some eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed already, but at the 37-second point in the trailer, in the cave below the bridge's left side end, you can spot what clearly looks like a couple of item boxes. Obviously, they're too small and distant to see the exact model being used, but they do look strikingly similar to the original game's item boxes. KEROTAN Frog. If you've played the original MGS3, there's a good chance that you spent an unhealthy amount of time scouring through its environments in search of a hidden KEROTAN frogs, toy-like collectibles that you were tasked with finding and shooting. Most would have expected that those, or something analogous to them at least, would be returning in MGS Delta, And that does indeed seem to be the case. Starting at about 49-second mark in the recent trailer, we're shown the arena where the boss fight against the Pain takes place. And the KEROTAN figure that could be found in the largest opening in the cave ceiling in the original game seems to be placed in the exact same spot in the remake as well. Vegetation. Given how densely packed Metal Gear Solid 3's environments were with vegetation, you'd expect its remake to pay special attention in that area, and MGS Delta does seem to be doing that. We've already mentioned the dense vegetation showcased throughout the remake's in-engine trailer, while in addition to that, there's also a few shots, like the 30-second and 45-second marks, where we can see blades of grass moving and reacting to Naked Snake as he moves through the grass patches. CQC. Up-close combat, or CQC, is one of those aspects of MGS3 that definitely haven't aged very gracefully, which means there's plenty of fans who are hoping for some meaningful upgrades to be made with the remake. For now, however, we still don't have any evidence that suggests that we will get these improvements. We see Snake using CQC only at one point in the recent trailer, and very briefly at that, at about the 45-second point, and it's a move that was present in the original game as well. Of course, we're hoping that MGS Delta does actually make improvements to CQC, and that's something Konami is choosing not to show off just yet. After all, this wasn't exactly a meaty gameplay reveal by any stretch of the imagination. Realistic injuries. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater featured a variety of survival features, but due to hardware limitations at the time, it wasn't able to do some real-time injuries. It seems that Delta will be adding those. As seen in the engine preview, Snake will suffer from cuts on his face, which is to be expected because the jungle isn't exactly going to be an easy place to survive. We don't know the full extent of how this is going to work, but this will likely tie in nicely into the game's healing mechanics. An expanded camouflage system. In the original game, Snake's clothes will get dirty due to environmental factors like quicksand and other threats in the game, but in the preview, we also see dirt getting accumulated on Snake's face. Does this mean that Snake can literally use environmental stuff like mud on his face so that he can better camouflage in the game's world? Hopefully that is the case, as it can result in exciting gameplay possibilities. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.